Well, hello and welcome to the AspieCast. I'm Stephen Michael, and this is episode 8, which is insanely late. I originally started this out about a year ago and was thinking about a weekly podcast, and then turned out that I just didn't have the time and brain power, brain cycles to do it weekly, so I tried monthly, and then that became like every 5 weeks, and then now I think it's been 5 months. Last one was in August of 2014, and now it's almost February. Tomorrow is February 2015. So I wonder if anybody else has that kind of thing, any other Aspies, if they're afflicted with this thing where they feel like they're completely, in the middle of doing stuff, and then time just keeps going by, and things just take forever to get done. In my case, I've been finding that it takes more and more effort to do these podcasts, maybe because I had more thoughts to say at the beginning and less now, and I have to think it out more. But that last one took me something like 10 hours. That was back in August. So I knew that if I had to put in the effort, it was going to, to do the next one, it might be another 10 hours. And then, so I've ended up, already putting in some number of hours planning what to say in this podcast, and I definitely have lots of stuff I want to say, but it's very hard to say it in a comprehensive, coordinated, logical sense unless I really plan it out. And so that ends up taking a lot more brain cycles and time and rehashing stuff. So it's a little crazy. And then the other thing that happens is I end up not having a good time and place to sit quietly and record. Right now I'm in a hotel room with a whole lot of honking horns outside, and I apologize for that noise, but I figure I better just go ahead and do this and get it done. And hopefully the horns won't be honking too much while I'm talking here. Anyway, I wanted to talk about chemicals in this episode, but before I do, I want to just throw a couple things out there that relate to previous episodes. I had talked about inappropriate statements in a previous episode, which is something that Aspies supposedly are afflicted with or are more likely to do, and I'm definitely in that realm. I just don't see any harm in saying things. People don't get physically in pain because of words, in my mind. So therefore words should be okay, and it shouldn't matter what I say. That's kind of how my brain works. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, it actually does matter tremendously what you say, because it affects directly how other people think about you, and regardless of whether I intended something totally benign, it's the receiver of the message that actually has the determination of the practical outcome. So whatever those people are receiving as a message are the ones that determine, how you're going to thrive in relation to whatever impact or control they might have on your existence. And that impact is usually very theoretical and stuff like that. So there's nothing obvious that you could ever extract from a situation that says, here's how it's going to affect me going forward. But I guess I just want to mention that I've definitely, had my share of attempting to be funny with inappropriate statements, a lot of times just trying to be funny. And it's definitely impacted me, and I didn't realize it till much later, and people think I'm a little obnoxious or strange, and that affects their willingness to, or their interest, diminishes their interest in interacting with me further, because maybe there's some awkward feelings that just don't feel good on the part of the other person. Now I probably mentioned one of the reasons I used to, and maybe still do, deal with inappropriate statements or use them, not because I want to be inappropriate, it's just I want to get some kind of rise out of people, because I normally can't get much interest in people. And I found that maybe 10% of the time when I say something really ridiculous and vulgar or inappropriate, I'll get a big smile or some, further interaction with people. And so what I say is, hey, that's 10% of the time. That's still, 10%. That's still 100% more than if I don't interact with people, which is, not good at all. Or if I interact with people using, what sort of used to be my normal interaction mode, which wasn't funny and it wasn't, inappropriate. It wasn't trying to be friendly. I don't know. I guess all I'm saying is it's very hard for me to talk to people, and so I rely on some sort of shocking types of statements to see if I can connect with people. And if that connection happens, then that's good. And it's, of course, very rare, and probably less than 10% of the time. But anyway, I recently turned 50 years old, and that really affects me because now I feel like I should be grown up and I shouldn't be doing these things. But I'm still having a blast being vulgar once in a while. And my latest thing is, it's actually been for the last 6 months. In the particular part of the world where I'm in, they speak Bengali. And I asked somebody how to say something, and they told me. So I like to say this phrase to Bengali people. I say, "Apne amar mukher upure bose parben." And that, again, it generates a range of reactions, sometimes disgust. At least, the viewing people's faces, it looks like they're disgusted. And then in other cases, they think it's funny, or they think I'm crazy, and then it opens up a potential for future communication when they don't think I'm disgusting. So anyway, that apni amar mukher upure bose parben, it means literally you, me, face on top of sit, you can. Or also known as you can sit on my face. Now, I don't think that I would ever want somebody to sit on my face, but I thought it was funny to be able to say that. So anyway, I'm still afflicted with this whole inappropriate statement thing, and I find it enjoyable in some cases, but at the same time, I realize I got to grow up. Now, in reinforcing that thought about me needing to grow up, there's a new book out there about Asperger's called Getting a Life with Asperger's, Lessons Learned on the Bumpy Road to Adulthood, and the author is Jesse A. Saperstein. I'll have a link to it at books.aspiecast.com. And there's a passage in the book that directly relates to the inappropriate stuff. He says, as I got older, transitioning into my teen years and 20s, I came to see that inappropriate behavior was no longer something I could easily blame on Asperger's syndrome. Others did not dismiss my comments or actions as simply quirky, cute, or different. Now they were creepy, troubling, and not acceptable. So that's interesting because I never even thought about stuff being creepy, but I guess if you go up to people and you say, you can sit on my face, that's pretty creepy. I'm kind of jealous because the author of that book got that indication in his teens and 20s, according to that passage. And for me, I didn't have enough social interactions with people, maybe because they were too disgusted with me, to even get the feedback where I would be able to determine that I was being considered, creepy or disgusting or whatever. So, and the only place or time, whatever, that I did start getting that kind of feedback that led me to believe that I gotta, think more carefully about what I'm saying and how I'm trying to connect with people. That happened only after making friends in a bar and having the one friend that finally felt comfortable enough to tell me that I was being very inappropriate. Now, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been out trying to make friends in the drinking world. So I'm not sure where I'm headed with that exactly, other than I don't like the fact that drinking and going to a bar is sort of a only social outlet, which it kind of is for me most of the time. And yet, by going there, I found out this fundamental thing, which Jesse Saperstein found out in his teens and 20s. Me, however, not until my 40s, and not until I had, gotten used to hanging out with people while I was drinking wine and, of course, getting inebriated. So I'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. But the main thing is interesting because the wine is a chemical, and that's kind of where I'm headed with this this whole episode. And in that case, I'm just sort of giving a indication that there was I hate to say it, but a growing up benefit to connecting with people in a bar where everybody's drinking. Now, I want to preface this, everything I'm saying going forward here is not, I hope, not going to be taken and not intended to say that any particular type of chemical has a good effect or good value or useful or is worth trying. Okay, so please do not consider any of this episode to endorse or suggest that you or anybody you know should be, looking at chemicals, drugs, alcohol, whatever, for any kind of solution. I just don't think it's right. But what I'm going to say in this episode is that it's definitely had an impact, some good, some bad. So let me sort of start out here. I grew up from the get-go with a dad who was ultra concerned about things being right or wrong. And maybe it wasn't his fault, but and I say fault because it was really a horrible way to grow up when somebody's constantly telling you do things wrong, especially because you hear that much more often than you're doing things when you're doing things right. And plenty of kids are going to make mistakes, right, growing up. So I ended up getting a lot of discipline in a very strong verbal way, sometimes physical spankings all the time, if I did something wrong. Anyway, I think my dad, maybe he was treated that way, and maybe his dad was treated that way. I don't know. I don't think it's normal, though, to constantly be telling your kids what they're doing is extremely wrong. But anyway, it affected me in such a way that I felt like I was scared to death from, let's say, age 5 onward, that I remember, scared to death that I was going to do something wrong at any given time. And that something wrong could be in any situation. It could be saying something wrong. It could be, picking something up the wrong way and holding it the wrong way, or holding a fork backwards. I don't know. But the result of that was that I actually have been able to really excel in my career, okay? Because I was so scared of doing something wrong for so long that when I got into the work world, it's even more scary to me because I'm being evaluated and it affects my ability to, I don't know, get a raise or get respect for, just working, with people, because you want to get the respect of your coworkers a lot of the time, and of course your boss. Anyway, I was so scared of doing things wrong that I pretty much double-checked and triple-checked everything I did every step of the way with every project, and like 99.5% of my work came out 100% correct, and that, I think, was quite surprising to all the people I worked with and worked for. And I ended up getting, promotions, raises, bonuses. It was really sort of reinforced my, mode of operation entirely. And I never knew why anybody else would not be, so concerned about doing things exactly correctly if they're getting paid for work. Now here's the thing. So that was a benefit to being scared of doing things wrong. directly affected my wallet. I ended up getting very nice salary and bonuses that, allowed me to do fun things, take trips, whatever. The bad thing is, if anybody even hinted that I did something wrong, or I was around somebody and I had a suspicion that I might have done something wrong, I would blush, okay? And that blushing is just a horrible, horrible experience. Not sure if other folks out there have that issue. I'd be real curious to know if any Aspies are subject to that, or if it was just a reaction within me. But fundamental reaction to any suggestion that I was going to be doing something wrong. Okay. And by the way, I'm not saying that this idea of right and wrong and all that, I don't know if this is quite related to being an Aspie, but I'm just putting it out there because it has a huge relevance to alcohol and other drugs on my side. But anyway, so just to continue, so I would blush, at the slightest hint that I might have done something inappropriate, incorrect, or wrong. And I say inappropriate, even though I loved to be inappropriate, and I wouldn't blush when I was trying to be, vulgar or disgusting. But at the same time, I didn't necessarily do that kind of stuff in the work environment. So where I'm worried about blushing is more in the work environment. And unfortunately, the work environment was my main part of my whole life and social interaction. So I didn't really have people to go out and do stuff with much of my life. So all my social stuff that I was, that formed my opinions of how people are supposed to interact is just from the work environment. Well, anyway, so blushing, it's just really freaky. It's something that I never had control over. It was almost like this completely other, power taking over my face and letting people know, because I was turning red, that I'm just this little embarrassed, helpless thing that I don't know. It's just it's a horrible feeling to do that, and especially as an adult, in your 20s, 30s, even 40s, to have that happen. Well, here's where the chemicals come in. I used to have a lot of allergies, probably still do, but I used to have it really bad every spring. And so I would take decongestant antihistamine pills, and I forget whether it's the decongestant or the antihistamine, but one of them sort of makes you sleepy. But the other thing is, it for me, it puts me in a very soothed, zoned out feeling. I can still interact, I can still do work, but I feel so much more soothed. And what I discovered was, just by accident, that when I was in one situation with my boss and I happened to have taken an allergy pill, I wasn't feeling scared and embarrassed and likely to blush. And indeed, I didn't blush. So it was the first realization that a chemical, and I'm using chemical to cover drugs and alcohol and everything, first realization that a chemical could affect how people see me and how people interact with me, and my ability to interact, because it's just so, just the trepidation of potentially blushing, in any situation, especially hierarchical interactions with the boss or the boss's boss or whatever. Anyway, it's just amazing to have not felt that horrible trepidation the time that I was on the allergy pill and being in this sort of zoned out state. So the good thing is I for some reason never felt like I would allow myself to rely on pills to gain the ability to function in life or something. It's a very awkward way to say it, but when I discovered that the allergy pill could help me in a social scenario to not be scared, and therefore the social conversations would be able to proceed further than normal, because I don't try to hurry out of the situation. Anyway, I never really felt comfortable trying to repeat that situation. I just noticed that it was pretty amazing that I could take a pill and then be able to interact with people better. So that was in my 20s at some point. The other thing that I discovered, maybe late 20s, just that if I could get perked up with caffeine, and used to be I'd get very perked up by it. Now I'm a little too used to it, and it's just sort of an average perk up. But when I get very perked up, not only do I get overly talkative, but I do feel a little more confident, and then I'm less likely to have this scaredy cat feeling of, I don't know, hierarchy issues and things that might make me blush and feel like I'm nothing. I don't know. And again, I'm sort of going in circles here. It's actually very hard to talk about too, because I don't want to think about the fact that I was having these blushing type situations. They were really devastating. And every time it happened, I knew I was blushing, and it's just horrible, horrible feeling because I couldn't control it. Anyway, it seemed like caffeine and getting myself perked up allowed me to have interactions better, just like the allergy pills allowed me. And so with caffeine, it was interesting because Starbucks, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, Starbucks was just sort of, exploding everywhere. So I think I started going there, and, I realized that if I went and had a latte or a mocha or whatever, I would, have a really good result and be able to be a little more confident and talk to people without being scared of saying something wrong. And then I sort of got addicted to caffeine, and I just, felt like horrible if I couldn't, have the opportunity to go to Starbucks and, have whatever. And I sort of graduated to having, cappuccino and double cappuccino, and tried some triple cappuccinos. At some point, I don't know if it was because of that, I got a kidney stone. And, excuse me, part of me wonders if the kidney stone was related to drinking so much, cappuccino, because the kidney stone had consistency of calcium and some other stuff. Anyways, it may or may not be unrelated to having so much cappuccino intake. I mean, I can't say one way or the other, but 10% of me thinks there's a connection there. Anyway, kidney stone is something where, if you go to the emergency room with the kidney stone type of pain or spasm that's happening at, whatever point that this kidney stone is lodged in your, in your tubing and your plumbing, that's when it causes huge amounts of pain. And the pain being such intensity that in my case, I ended up throwing up because of the amount of pain. It was that bad. So the reason I'm mentioning this is I got to be injected with morphine. And morphine's amazing. It basically took this pain that was, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was 100. And the morphine, pretty much made that pain just vanish. But here's what I also discovered and never forgot is all of my scared feelings about interacting with the world went away. And I remember entirely how good that felt of not being scared or worried or concerned that, the next instant was going to have me facing something that maybe I was going to be doing wrong or I don't know what, but I guess, most of my life, again, I don't know if it's Aspie related or what, but, just having this constant background process going that I never even knew might be possible to not exist. Anyway, that background process of being scared and worried, that whole background process went away, and I got, during this morphine period of maybe an hour, I got to feel like, oh, wow, imagine if this is how it was every day, that I didn't have to worry so much. Anyway, it clued me into why people get addicted to morphine. It's just, I couldn't believe what it's like to not have worries. I could never get addicted to it, though. It was $100 for each shot that I got during the kidney stone episode. So, by this time I've got, 3 things now. I've seen chemicals totally alter my perception of interacting with people. Allergy pills, caffeine, morphine. So soon after the kidney stone event, I moved from California to the East Coast, and never had been a bar person or a drinker or anything, but I found that if I wanted to go meet people, it was possible to do so by going to a bar or trying different bars. And as a result, I would try rum and Coke because it seemed like it was an easy thing to drink. And I did find that it would make me a little more conversive and less scared. And I think that's for everybody. I mean, they call it liquid courage. Now, I did, unfortunately, start relying on that for connecting with people. And I think a lot of people do. But it, I started relying on it too much, and it just, it kind of can really take you down in terms of depression later on. Not just hangover, but serious depression. Really bizarre. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of alcohol. Now I maybe around the same time of going to the East Coast, some number of years later, I started going to therapy, and the therapist recommended that I get evaluated to see if I should have some pharmacotherapy, I think he called it, but what he meant was, anti-anxiety drugs or something like that. So I did. I went to another person who was a psychiatrist, so my regular therapist wasn't able to prescribe drugs. And the psychiatrist talked to me and said, yeah, okay, I think you should take Paxil. And so Paxil, I guess it's an anti-anxiety drug. I wasn't really told that I had anxiety or depression or whatever. The psychiatrist basically just said, here, based on talking to you, here's what I think you should have. Now, here's the trippy part. The Paxil, within a couple of weeks, made my blushing stop. That was pretty intense to have that go away. So this major tragic situation that I was always in, which was blushing at the slightest hint of doing something incorrect, went away with this drug. And what did that mean? Well, that meant that I wasn't avoiding situations where I might be accused of doing something wrong, which for me was all possible situations. So just absolutely amazing to me that a pill solved the blushing problem, which for me was never anything I could figure out how to control. It was just so in the background, and it just took over whenever it wanted to. So this pill, by solving that, then I had the freedom to be able to potentially go and talk to people without this extreme fear that I'm going to blush and have them think I'm some kind of scaredy cat weakling weird person. Now, the other interesting thing about Paxil, and they tell everybody that takes this, is that it reduces your sexual thoughts or sexual desires or whatever. And it did. And thank God, because one of the other things is, when you can't connect with people, then, it also reduces your opportunities to make friends that might become intimate partners. And then when that happens, you end up, sometimes the sexual thoughts can take over a lot more. And, you have no sexual outlet, and then the, the thoughts get more and more intense and more common. And that was really, that dogged me like crazy. Seems like the more alone I was, the more I was thinking about sex. And the Paxil calmed that down tremendously. And I thought that was so great. Because, when you're alone and you got all these sexual thoughts, all it does is make you frustrated. because I didn't have any outlet. I didn't have any way to, to go and meet friends and become close enough to maybe become intimate friends. I had no clue how that would work, given that I was scared to death and I might blush and blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, I felt so much better. And I wished, that I had the ability to be on Paxil 5-10 years previous, just because of, the blushing going away and then the sexual frustration going away. I did continue to see the psychiatrist, because when they put you on a medication like that, they want to touch base with you every few months. So I did. And I mentioned that I still have these episodes of just what I called becoming very morose. And I'm not sure, but I think it was also because sometimes I would drink. And the problem is having alcohol and also being on Paxil makes you have, or for me anyway, makes me have terrible depression, within a day of having alcohol. And I'm not sure if that's what I was experiencing at the time, but I did mention becoming very morose sometimes to my psychiatrist. So he gave me some Xanax, and I think it's also called alprazolam. And I never really wanted to take it, but I'm mentioning it here because I know some people are addicted to it and some people find it very helpful. I never felt like I should take it. I still had this impression that it's just not too good to take drugs if you don't have to. Anyway, the first time I tried Xanax, I had done something horribly inappropriate or incorrect or violating boundaries, is I guess what I would say, of in my work as an independent contractor. I offered somebody something that violated a whole bunch of contracts at multiple levels, and tons of people could have gotten, in deep yogurt financially because of something I had done. And I had no way. Well, at first I didn't think it was a problem, but then when I got caught, I had no way to sleep or anything, and I didn't know what to do. And so I took a Xanax, and at least it kind of cleared things up for the next 12 hours. And I guess it was interesting because I took it for something that was just totally, preventing me from functioning, and it seemed to let me, get to sleep and then wake up a little bit more normal. Now, I did kind of wake up with a headache, so I told the psychiatrist later that, I don't think I can become addicted to Xanax because it's, having that headache afterwards didn't impress me. But anyways, so I never really took Xanax too much, just, again, once in a while when something was really horrible. And that was the first time, or that was the first time was the only really horrible time that I took it, or the really horrible reason that I took it. But I was still having periods of sort of severe sadness, I guess. And so, maybe after a year from the time I had started with the Paxil, the psychiatrist gave me lamictal. Now, lamictal changed my life. Its generic name is lamotrigine, and it's a mood stabilizer, and apparently they'll give it to people that are bipolar. Maybe folks out there have bipolar disorder and they're using it. I was told that it's not, in my case, at the dosage I was given, it wasn't for bipolar, because some of these things have different dosages and they act differently depending on the dosage. Anyway, I was just told it was a mood stabilizer, and I can't exactly understand, why whatever I said to the psychiatrist qualified, for this drug or that drug. But tried the lamictal, and within like 2 weeks, I could tell things were so much different. I mean, I just was less worried. I was much more okay with things being ambiguous in social situations, and just in general, just less worried. And one of the things I used to always be worried about was being on time. And if I couldn't be on time, I would just go nuts, and I would kind of like be very nervous all the time if I was around people that weren't going to be on time. And so having the lamictal and having that worry go away. I could be late to something and not be totally nervous and frustrated. And that was just such an amazingly liberating feeling, to not have to be so, or just to not be scared, frustrated, and worried about being late after, having been that way the previous 4 decades of my life. So I have to say, lamictal is really, of all the drugs, it's been great. And unfortunately, I'm still on it after, 15 years. And I didn't ever want to be on a drug for 15 years, but the lamictal and the paxil still. I will say that it cost me a lot of money because I was, working on my own and paying through the nose for individual health insurance with Kaiser, and Kaiser wasn't selling generic lamictal, and end result, I was having to pay like $350 a month just for the drugs. And Kaiser wouldn't get the generic, but they had the generic in Canada, so I eventually found that I could buy it in Canada for a little cheaper. Then some other American company started offering it even more cheaper, but I now get it at like 1/10 the price that it used to be. So going forward a number of years, a couple of years ago I moved back out to California from the East Coast, and I ran out of, or my prescription refills ran out. So I found out, unfortunately, that the doctor that I had been seeing, the psychiatrist, was not able to help me refill the prescriptions because I was in California and he wasn't, licensed to write a prescription for somebody in California. So I went to some kind of health clinic where I just said, hey, I need these refills. Can you help me? And they kind of interviewed me and did all the right stuff that you would do to a new person. And they said, hey, we can also give you this other drug, wellbutrin. It might perk you up a little bit. And I had mentioned to them that I do find that lamictal and paxil sort of keep me a little bit more down, and it definitely, less energy and more weight gain, I think, from those two drugs, or one or the other or both. Anyway, they said, well, here, we can give you this wellbutrin. It might perk you up. And I do think that's a little awkward. So you take 2 pills to help you and then one to undo the effects of the 2 that you're trying to help you. So I was on wellbutrin for a couple of months. And one of the other problems, though, is I still continue to rely on social situations by means of going to a bar. And especially, moving to California, to a new city, not knowing how to meet people, I was drinking wine. And what I found after 2 months of being on wellbutrin is I think there was a rather alarming effect of combining wellbutrin with alcohol. I think that's what it was. But I just, this was in the last year and a half, I guess. I was having a great conversation with some folks at a bar, and I think I was really perked up and having a blast. And I was trying to be funny to the bartender, and the bartender got real nasty face because I was being funny in a very sarcastic way. And then I had some more conversation with the people near me, and it was great. And then I, for some reason, got this thing in my head that I wanted to be even more awkward and nasty or something. I don't know. So I asked one of the other bartenders, I said, what was that other woman's name? He says, oh, that was Nancy. And I said, oh, damn, I thought her name was Bitch. Well, that didn't go over well. And anyway, so that bartender, he says, look, you can leave. As soon as you finish this wine, you can leave. So basically, I got kicked out of the bar, at least not right at that moment, but I felt horrible. And I've never had that kind of thing where I found myself calling a bartender a bitch, and she was probably right around there. And so I kind of thought, okay, that's something that maybe could be related to the wellbutrin. I don't know. So I stopped the wellbutrin. And anyway, I'm just saying this. I'm curious because I think wellbutrin, if I'm not mistaken, is something that a lot of people do rely on. But if anybody's had any interesting side effects or something, it would be interesting to know. Now, anyways, I am still, unfortunately, relying on alcohol almost, gosh, completely for social interaction. And in my case, red wine, really. I gave up, the rum and Coke stuff that I had originally started with, just because it seemed a little too strong. And with wine, you can sort of sip slowly, but the problem is you can just keep drinking. Like if I have 2 glasses of wine, then the third one doesn't sound bad. And after a third one, then, 6 more doesn't sound bad. I'm exaggerating. I could never drink that much, but it's just sad because you can lose total track of how much you should or shouldn't have. And so for me, it's at that third glass level, everything goes haywire. But even after 3 glasses, depending on what's in your stomach, it could be too much, and you shouldn't be out. And so I'm still relying on going out and having wine to meet people. And when I do that, it definitely makes a horrible next day. If I have like more than 2 glasses, I feel horrible the next day. And I believe that's because of paxil and lamictal. And when I say horrible, I mean extremely depressed. I don't mean hangover. But God, the depression is just horrible. The only thing I've found is if I drink tons of water while I'm drinking the wine, that can sort of mitigate the effect. But again, I think what's happening is the wine is a depressive effect that, in addition to the paxil and lamictal, just can take you so far down. And I don't want to say suicidal, but close to it, because it's really bizarre. The chemicals can solve a lot of problems in your head, but they can also cause some bizarre, horrible problems. And the only solution, going out of those problems is strictly waiting. All you can do is wait for your body to process the stuff out of your system or something. But so right now I am sort of stuck. I mean, I'm still taking this paxil and lamictal, and I'm stuck because I don't have any good social outlets on a regular basis that I feel comfortable going to, and then feel like I can engage with people that are enjoying my company and vice versa. And yet, if I go and have wine, if I go to the right places, the probability of having a good conversation goes way up. And maybe that's crazy, and of course the conversations might appear good when you have enough wine in you. But again, it's still 100% more than the good conversations that I would have otherwise. In other words, I would not have any conversations if I didn't go out and try to socialize in, let's say, a bar. I mean, it's just amazing to me, because you can go to a bar and there's other people there that probably want to talk to you. And people sort of talk and they're in a good mood because they're getting inebriated. So for me, it's like the perfect situation. And I don't want anybody else to think this is advice, because there's terrible, bad things that go along with it. Driving especially, and the depression in my case that comes from combining the wine with the drugs. So, but I'm trapped, because what happens is I can go without alcohol for a couple of days and I feel so good, and then I start getting really worried that I'm going to be alone. And it's a horrible feeling to be worried that you're going to be alone and you don't have anybody to talk to, but at the same time you feel good and you really want to talk to somebody. So then I go have wine and I have a good time, and then I feel horrible the next day and I don't have some alcohol. And then it gets out of my system and I feel better, and then the next day I feel really good, and I think, God, life is short. I better go out and take advantage of this good happiness that I have right now. And then I have wine and I, talk to people, and I'd say 50% of the time that I go out to a bar, I come back feeling so great, because I just had really good conversations, either with people that I've already met or new people, oftentimes new people. And I don't know, it's just it's a big ego boost, like nothing I've ever had, earlier in life. So it's really got this amazingly good effect, and yet it depends on alcohol, which has a horrible long-term effect. And so I'm stuck because I don't know what the other options are. I do know, though, that if I'm alone, regardless, if I didn't go out, I know I would feel horrible, because I've had these feelings in the past of being totally alone, totally trapped, no opportunity to interact with people. And that is just absolute horrible feeling, and I can't describe how horrible I felt. I mean, in certain situations, especially just sitting at home alone on New Year's Eve one time and watching, the Dick Clark New Year's Eve special, whatever. And I just remember this horrible feeling. I mean, just totally alone. There was no alcohol, no paxil, no lamictal in my system at that point, because this was before all that. But boy, did it feel horrible. So I remember that, and I don't want to go through it again. So I'd rather, go out and have wine in a bar with the, at least be out and talking to people, instead of that risk of being alone. So end result, I have a respect for chemicals, even though I never wanted to have a respect for chemicals as a way to solve human interaction issues. And the chemicals, like I've said, the caffeine has helped me feel more confident, perked up. The allergy pills let me realize that if I'm really soothed and calm and, at peace, I'm not going to be so worried about doing things wrong. The Xanax has helped me recover from horrible human interaction issues at work that, where I might have done something wrong, something major that screwed me up. The paxil stopped me from blushing. The lamictal stopped me from being scared to death of being late. And then the alcohol allows me to feel like I've got an opportunity to go out and meet people. Now, I know there's some folks that will drink at home, and that's not me. I have no desire to really drink by myself. It doesn't do anything. So the whole thing for drinking for me is just because if you go to a bar, I guess I could drink water. And you get a little more attention when you're drinking something like wine. It's a little bit different. Some bars look down on you because you're hoity-toity or something like that, and I don't go to those. But it just, my gosh, chemicals have a completely huge zillion billion % impact on my social interaction development and opportunities and future too. And unfortunately, I am definitely scared of all this. I don't like this situation because number one, I don't like the fact that I have to rely on chemicals where maybe other people don't, and by relying on chemicals, I am harming my body. I'm harming my insides. I don't want to know what my liver might be like, because I know that, just the paxil and or lamictal can be a problem for your liver to begin with, and then combining the detrimental effects of alcohol on top of that is it's got to be bad, and so that stuff worries me. But the fear of being alone worries me even more in the short term, and so I end up, heading out to try and meet people with wine as my excuse or whatever. I don't know. But as I mentioned, I do have to watch out for saying inappropriate things, especially when I have some wine in me. So I'm getting better at that. I'm learning more, and gosh, I don't know. I'm trying to make up for lost time too. I think a lot of people, maybe in their college years, they learn about alcohol and, what to do, what not to do, and maybe they have fun without risking career issues or hits. In my case, I definitely have lost productivity, and wine is very expensive. Alcohol in general is very expensive unless you're drinking at home, which, I don't want to do. So, yeah, that's the other thing, that, chemicals hurt your pocketbook. lamictal and paxil cost me, like I said, $350 a month. And that went on credit cards, and that led to some other issues that I don't even want to think about right now, but blowing out your credit card. Anyway, that's about it. I've tried to make this one a little shorter. There's a lot more detail that I probably could put in there, and I don't know. I'm just not sure how to do these things correctly. So I figured I'd do what a lot of people recommend, which is just put something out there and try not to be too embarrassed. Although I am kind of embarrassed because now I've been getting emails from people, and I know there's people listening. And in the past I didn't feel as concerned about who was out there hearing me. Now that I know there's people listening to me and they've emailed me, I'm like hypersensitive about saying something stupid or wrong or different. Anyway, that's my problem. So if you have questions, concerns, if you can relate to anything, and if you have experiences that you want to share, or suggestions about other episode content, please do send me an email. The address is AspieCast@gmail.com. And I can't guarantee that I'll respond, but I can guarantee that I'll read everything that comes in. And also books.aspiecast.com has a link to the Amazon page for the Jesse Saperstein book. And then I think I have another one called videos.aspiecast.com, and that'll take you, I think, to the same place, but you'll see like I have a list up there for Amazon page for like Monk TV series. That particular TV series that I've probably mentioned it before makes me feel much more self-confident, just because Monk exhibits all these issues or symptoms of Asperger's, and even though that's not ever mentioned in this show, but he's a totally respected guy. And and the movie Adam, which I thought was really good too, because it touched on a lot of the same issues that a lot of Aspies have. And anyway, just I think that's about it. So I will see if I can't do another episode in a shorter time interval than 5 months. So hopefully maybe in a month. Thanks again for listening, and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.